The drawing room at Thornbury House glittered with candlelight and the brittle laughter of London's finest. Marguerite Ashwell stood near the marble fireplace, her silk gown the color of faded roses, watching her husband of 12 years hold court among the younger women. He had positioned himself near the pianoforte, where a girl barely 20 played a spirited waltz, her golden ringlets bouncing with each flourish. "Your husband seems quite taken with Miss Pemberley," observed Lady Hartwick, her voice carrying the particular sharpness reserved for delivering unpleasant truths under the guise of concern. Marguerite kept her expression serene, though her knuckles whitened against her champagne glass. "Miss Pemberley plays beautifully." "Indeed. Youth has its advantages." Lady Hartwick's gaze swept over Marguerite with calculated assessment. "Though I suppose at your age, one learns to accept certain realities." At 37, Marguerite had committed the unforgivable sin of aging while her husband's fortune had grown. She watched Charles lean closer to Miss Pemberley, whispering something that made the girl blush and giggle. The same man who had once recited poetry beneath her window now barely looked at her across the breakfast table. "Marguerite." Charles's voice cut through her thoughts. He had crossed the room with surprising speed, his expression tight with poorly concealed irritation. "I need a word, in private." The conversations around them dimmed as curious faces turned their way. Marguerite set down her glass with deliberate care. "Of course." He gripped her elbow, steering her toward the library with enough force to leave marks. The moment the door closed behind them, he released her as though her touch burned. "I want a divorce." The words landed bare and final between them, blunt and graceless. Marguerite had known this moment was coming, had felt it building like a storm on the horizon, yet hearing it spoken aloud still stole her breath. "On what grounds?" Her voice emerged steadier than she felt. "Does it matter?" Charles turned away, pouring himself brandy from the crystal decanter. "You're old, Marguerite. You've given me no children, no sons to carry my name. What use are you to me now?" "I see." She folded her hands at her waist, a gesture of composure learned from years of enduring his casual cruelties. "And Miss Pemberley? Does she factor into this decision? She's young, fertile. Everything a man of my position requires." He drained his glass in one swallow. "My solicitor will contact you tomorrow. You'll have an allowance, naturally, enough to live quietly somewhere in the country." How generous. The words tasted like ash. "Don't be bitter. It's unbecoming." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Marguerite, I'd appreciate it if you'd vacate the house by week's end. Miss Pemberley and I plan to announce our engagement at the Rothschild ball." After he left, Marguerite stood alone in the library, surrounded by books she'd once loved and could no longer bear to read. The life she'd built, fragile as it was, had shattered in the space of a conversation. She was too old, too barren, too inconvenient. She left through the servants' entrance, unable to face the pitying stares and whispered gossip that would follow her departure. The night air bit through her thin shawl as she walked without direction through London's gaslit streets. Her feet carried her away from Mayfair's elegant squares toward the older parts of the city, where narrow lanes twisted between ancient buildings. The fog had rolled in from the Thames, thick and yellow, swallowing the street lamps' glow. Marguerite barely noticed. She was thinking of her mother's house in Cornwall, the small cottage where she'd spend her remaining years as a cautionary tale for younger women. Don't grow old. Don't fail to produce heirs. Don't become inconvenient. "Madam, you shouldn't be walking alone at this hour." The voice emerged from the fog itself, low and accented with something she couldn't quite place. Marguerite stopped, her heart suddenly pounding against her ribs. A figure materialized from the mist, tall and lean, dressed in dark clothing that seemed to absorb what little light remained. "I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs." The words came out sharper than intended, years of swallowed anger finally finding an outlet. "I don't doubt it." He stepped closer, and she caught her first clear glimpse of his face. Sharp cheekbones, pale skin that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, and eyes of such startling amber that she took an involuntary step backward. But these streets are dangerous for anyone, capable or not. Then I suggest you move along and let me be dangerous in peace. A shadow crossed across his expression, too quick to name, surprise perhaps, or amusement. You remind me of someone. I'm sure I remind you of many someones. We women of a certain age all blur together, don't we? She gathered her skirts, preparing to sweep past him. His hand shot out, catching her wrist with surprising gentleness. Wait, please. The contact sent a shock through her, as though she'd touched something electric. She looked down at his hand, noting the unusual coldness of his skin, the strength in his grip that he was clearly restraining. Let go of me. In a moment. His gaze had fixed on her face with an intensity that made her want to flee and stay in equal measure. What's your name? That's hardly your concern. Marguerite. He said it with absolute certainty, and her spine went rigid. Your name is Marguerite. How did you? Because I knew you. 300 years ago, you wore your hair differently and spoke with a French accent, but you had the same eyes, the same defiant tilt to your chin when challenged. His thumb brushed across her wrist, tracing the pulse point. The same heartbeat. Marguerite wrenched her arm free, stumbling backward. You're mad. Perhaps. He made no move to follow her. But I'm also telling the truth. You died in my arms in 1547, and I've spent 3 centuries searching for you. This is absurd. I'm leaving. She turned, but his next words stopped her. You have a birthmark on your left shoulder blade, shaped like a crescent moon. You dream in French sometimes, though you've never studied the language, and you feel like you're remembering something just out of reach whenever you smell lavender. Her hand flew to her shoulder, though the birthmark was hidden beneath layers of fabric. The dreams had plagued her since childhood, fragments of a life that couldn't possibly be hers. And lavender always made her inexplicably sad. Who are you? My name is Dante Moreau, and I've been waiting for you to come back to me. A church bell tolled midnight somewhere in the distance. Marguerite felt the world tilting beneath her feet, all the certainties of her life crumbling like sand. Charles's rejection, which had seemed so devastating an hour ago, now felt like a distant concern. This is impossible. Most worthwhile things are. He moved closer, and she noticed he cast no shadow despite the nearby street lamp. You don't have to believe me tonight, but you're in danger walking these streets alone, and I would very much like to ensure you reach safety. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. His smile was sad, ancient. But you will anyway. You always did. Against every instinct of self-preservation, Marguerite found herself nodding. Perhaps it was the shock of the evening, or the strange certainty in his voice, or simply that she had nothing left to lose. I'm staying at the Langham Hotel, temporarily. Then allow me to escort you. They walked in silence through the fog-shrouded streets, an odd pair that drew no attention from the few souls still abroad at this hour. Marguerite was acutely aware of Dante beside her, his presence both comforting and unsettling. He moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost inhuman, and twice she caught him scanning the shadows as though expecting an attack. You said I died in your arms. The words emerged before she could stop them. How? Plague. His voice was flat, emotionless. It swept through Paris that summer, taking thousands. I tried to save you, but I was too late. By the time I understood what I could offer you, you were already gone. What could you have offered? He didn't answer immediately. They had reached a better lit street, and Marguerite saw his jaw tighten, a muscle jumping beneath the pale skin. Immortality. At a price. You're speaking in riddles. I'm speaking in truths you're not ready to hear. He stopped at the corner, gesturing toward the Langham's illuminated facade 3 blocks distant. You'll be safe from here. But Marguerite, I need you to promise me something. We've only just met, or re-met according to your delusions. Promise me you won't make any permanent decisions about your future for the next fortnight, no matter what your husband or society demands. The mention of Charles brought reality crashing back. How do you know about my husband? I know everything about you. I've been watching over you since you were born, waiting for the right moment to approach. He must have seen the alarm in her expression, because he quickly added, not in a sinister way, simply ensuring you were safe, that you had the life you deserved. The life I deserved ended tonight in a library, while my husband told me I was too old to be useful. Dante's expression darkened, and for a moment, Marguerite glimpsed something predatory in his amber eyes. Charles Ashwell is a fool who doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as you. Nevertheless, he's divorcing me, and I'll be ruined. Or free. Dante took her hand, raising it to his lips in a gesture that would have been gallant, if not for the intensity of his gaze. 2 weeks, Marguerite. Give me 2 weeks to show you what your life could become. She should have refused, should have fled to the hotel and never looked back. Instead, she found herself nodding, drawn by the promise of something she couldn't name. 2 weeks, then I'm leaving for Cornwall. 2 weeks, he agreed. Meet me tomorrow evening at the British Museum, the Egyptian wing, 7 o'clock. Before she could respond, he had disappeared into the fog, moving with impossible speed. Marguerite stood alone on the street corner, her heart racing, wondering if she'd imagined the entire encounter. But when she reached her hotel room and undressed for bed, she found a single sprig of lavender on her pillow, its scent filling the air with memories that weren't quite hers. The next evening, Marguerite told herself she was going to the museum to prove Dante Moreau was either a charlatan or a madman. She certainly wasn't going because his words had haunted her dreams, or because the lavender had made her weep for reasons she couldn't explain. The Egyptian wing was nearly deserted at this hour, most visitors having departed for dinner. Marguerite wandered among the sarcophagi and ancient artifacts, her footsteps echoing on the marble floor. She was studying a case of jewelry when she felt his presence behind her. You came. I'm here to tell you this is madness and I won't be participating further. She didn't turn around, keeping her gaze fixed on a golden collar necklace. Whatever game you're playing, find another mark. It's not a game. He moved to stand beside her, his reflection absent in the glass case. Marguerite's lungs stalled, but she forced herself to remain calm. That necklace belonged to a priestess of Isis. She wore it the night she was murdered by her lover's wife. The placard says it's from the 18th dynasty. The placard is correct. I was there when they excavated it in 1823. He pointed to a small inscription on the inner band. See that mark? I watched the priestess have it engraved. Her name was Nefertari, and she had your eyes. Marguerite finally turned to face him. In the museum's gaslight, he looked even more otherworldly than he had in the fog. His skin had the translucent quality of fine porcelain, and those amber eyes seemed to glow with their own internal light. What are you? I think you already know. That's impossible. Vampires are fiction, gothic novels and penny dreadfuls. Most fiction has roots in truth. He gestured toward a bench against the far wall. Sit with me. Let me tell you a story. Against her better judgment, Marguerite sat. Dante settled beside her, maintaining a respectful distance, his hands folded in his lap like a penitent. I was born in 1247 in Provence. The son of a merchant, nothing remarkable. I fell in love with a girl named Marguerite de Valois when I was 23. She was the daughter of a minor nobleman, far above my station, but she loved me anyway. His voice was soft, distant. We had 3 years together before the plague came. I watched her die over the course of a week, helpless to save her. I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm not finished. He turned to face her fully. In my grief, I sought out a creature I'd heard whispered about in taverns. a woman who could grant immortality. I begged her to bring Marguerite back. She told me it was too late, that the dead stay dead. But she offered me an alternative, immortality, so that when Marguerite's soul returned to the world, I would be there to find her. Souls don't return. When we die, we go to heaven or hell. Do we? Or do we come back again and again until we learn what we're meant to learn? He reached into his coat and withdrew a small, leather-bound book. I've kept journals for 300 years. Every time I've found you, I've documented it. He opened the book to a page marked with a ribbon. Marguerite saw a sketch of a woman who could have been her twin, dressed in Renaissance clothing. The date written beneath was 1547. This proves nothing. You could have drawn anyone. Turn the page. She did, and found another sketch. Same woman, different clothing. The date read 1623. Another page, another version of herself in the fashions of 1701, then 1789. Each time, the same face with minor variations. The same eyes. How many times? Her voice emerged as barely a whisper. 7, including this life. Each time, I find you. Each time, we have a few precious years together. And each time, you die, and I'm left to wait again. Marguerite's hands trembled as she closed the book. Why don't I remember? Because souls forget when they're reborn, but sometimes fragments remain. Dreams, unexplained knowledge, a feeling of déjà vu that won't fade. He took the book from her gently. You dream in French because that was your native language in your first life. You're drawn to lavender because I gave you a bouquet of it the day we met. And you have a birthmark in the shape of a crescent moon because in every life, your soul carries the same marks. This is insane. Yes, he smiled, and for the first time, she saw genuine warmth in his expression. But it's also true. A guard passed by, his footsteps loud in the silence. Marguerite waited until he'd moved to the next gallery before speaking again. Assuming I believe any of this, which I don't, what do you want from me? Nothing you're not willing to give. I want to know you again, to have whatever time were granted before. He stopped, his expression darkening. Before I die, again. Yes, Marguerite stood, needing distance to think. She walked to a statue of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of death, and stared up at his impassive face. Behind her, she heard Dante rise, but not approach. You said you could have offered me immortality, in that first life. I could have transformed you, made you what I am. His voice was heavy with old regret. But by the time I understood that was possible, you were too far gone. The transformation only works on the living. And in the other lives? I never offered. The transformation is irreversible, and I couldn't bear to trap you in darkness without your full understanding and consent. Each time I told myself I would explain everything, give you the choice. And each time, you died before I found the courage. Marguerite turned to face him. You've had 300 years to perfect your approach, and you still haven't figured it out? Would you have believed me if I'd approached you a year ago, while you were still happily married? Or 5 years ago, when you were trying to conceive? He shook his head. Timing matters. You had to be ready to hear the truth. And you think I'm ready now, because my husband has discarded me like a worn-out shoe? I think you're ready now, because you have nothing left to lose, and everything to gain. He crossed the distance between them, stopping just close enough that she could feel the unnatural coldness radiating from his skin. You asked what I want from you. The truth is, I want to give you something, a choice I've never offered before. What choice? Immortality, a life that doesn't end when your beauty fades or your husband decides you're inconvenient. A chance to see centuries unfold, to learn everything you've ever wanted to know, to become more than society says you're allowed to be. Marguerite's pulse beat wild in her throat. "You're offering to transform me into a vampire. I'm offering you freedom." He raised his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His touch was ice cold but gentle. "But only if you want it. Only if you choose it freely, understanding what it means." "What does it mean?" "What does? It means drinking blood to survive, though we've learned to take it from animals or willing donors. It means avoiding sunlight, which weakens us. It means watching the mortal world change while you remain constant. It means outliving everyone you know who doesn't make the same choice." His hand dropped to his side. "It means becoming something that society fears and misunderstands." It sounds lonely. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. His amber eyes held hers with an intensity that made her want to look away and lean closer in equal measure. "I've been lonely for 300 years, Marguerite, waiting for you, losing you, waiting again. I'm offering you a chance to end that cycle, to choose to stay. And if I say no," pain flickered across his face, "then I'll cherish whatever time we have, and I'll wait for you to come back again, as I always have." A clock somewhere in the museum chimed 8. Marguerite realized she'd been here for over an hour, and the world outside these walls seemed increasingly unreal. Charles and his divorce, the pitying stares of society, the cottage in Cornwall, all of it felt like a half-remembered dream compared to the impossible reality standing before her. "I need time to think." "Of course." Dante stepped back, giving her space. "Take all the time you need. I'll be at the Serpentine tomorrow night at 10. If you come, I'll answer any questions you have. If you don't, I'll understand. And if I decide this is all an elaborate delusion, then you'll go to Cornwall, live out your days in peace, and I'll wait for you to be born again." He smiled sadly. "I've gotten quite good at waiting." Marguerite left the museum in a daze, her mind reeling. She should dismiss everything Dante had told her as fantasy, but the sketches in his journal had been too accurate, and the lavender on her pillow too perfectly timed. And there was the undeniable fact that he cast no reflection in glass. That night, she dreamed of Paris in summer, of narrow streets and the smell of bread baking, of a young man with dark hair and laughing eyes who called her mon coeur. She woke with tears on her cheeks and the certainty that the dream was memory. The next evening, she went to the Serpentine. Dante was waiting on a bench overlooking the water, his dark coat blending with the shadows. He stood when he saw her approach, and Marguerite saw relief flash across his features. "You came." "I had more questions." She sat on the bench, and he settled beside her, maintaining that careful distance. "In your journal, you said we had years together in each life. What happened? How did I die?" "Different ways. Plague, as I said, in the first life. Childbirth in the second. Consumption in the third. A carriage accident in the fourth." His voice was flat, reciting facts to keep emotion at bay. "In 1789, you were caught in the Revolution. Wrong place, wrong time. In the last life, just 30 years ago, you were murdered by someone who discovered what I was and thought you were the same." Marguerite's hand flew to her throat. "Someone killed me because of you?" "Yes." The word was barely audible. "That's why I stayed away this time. Why I only watched from a distance. I told myself I wouldn't approach you, wouldn't put you in danger again. But then I saw you walking alone in the fog, and I couldn't stay away. I've never been able to stay away." "You said the transformation only works on the living. Why didn't you offer it in the other lives, before I died?" "Cowardice." He turned to face her, and she saw centuries of guilt in his eyes. "I was afraid you'd say no, afraid you'd be horrified by what I am, afraid that offering would drive you away, and I'd lose even the brief time we had together. So I waited, always planning to ask tomorrow, next week, next month, and then you'd be gone, and I'd have another century to regret my silence." A couple walked past, arm in arm, laughing at some private joke. Marguerite waited until they'd moved out of earshot. What makes you think I won't say no now? Nothing. You might refuse, and I'd deserve it. He reached into his coat and withdrew a small vial filled with dark liquid. But this time, I'm not letting fear stop me from giving you the choice. This is my blood. If you drink it and then die within 3 days, you'll transform. If you don't die, it will simply pass through your system with no effect. Marguerite stared at the vial, her heart racing. You're asking me to die. I'm asking you to choose. Drink this, and then take a fatal dose of laudanum, and you'll wake up immortal. Or don't drink it, and live out your natural life. He pressed the vial into her hand. But Marguerite, please understand. If you choose mortality, I won't approach you again in this life. I can't watch you die one more time. I can't. His voice broke on the last word, and Marguerite saw tears glinting in his eyes. 300 years of loss, condensed into a single moment of raw vulnerability. How long do I have to decide? As long as you need. The blood will remain potent indefinitely. He stood, preparing to leave. But know this, Charles Ashwell's solicitor visited him today. Your husband plans to claim you're mentally unfit to manage your own affairs. He wants to have you committed to an asylum so he can marry Miss Pemberley without the scandal of divorce. Marguerite's stomach dropped like a stone. How do you know this? I have resources, connections, 3 centuries of accumulated favors. His expression hardened. He's planning to have you taken tomorrow night. I can stop it if you want. 1 word from me and he'll withdraw his petition. Why would he listen to you? Because I can be very persuasive when necessary. The predatory gleam returned to his eyes. Say the word, and Charles Ashwell will never trouble you again. Marguerite stood, the vial clutched in her hand. Don't hurt him. I won't lay a finger on him. But he will understand that you are under my protection, and any attempt to harm you will have consequences. Dante moved closer, and Marguerite caught the scent of him, cold stone and old books, and something indefinably ancient. You have a choice to make, mon cœur. Choose the life you want, not the one society says you should have. He left her there by the water, disappearing into the darkness with that impossible speed. Marguerite looked down at the vial in her hand, feeling the weight of 300 years of love and loss pressing down on her shoulders. She went back to her hotel room and laid the vial on the bedside table. For 3 days she stared at it, turning Dante's offer over in her mind. Immortality, freedom from aging, from society's judgment, from the fear of being discarded when she was no longer young and useful. But also, drinking blood, avoiding sunlight, becoming something inhuman, watching the world change while she remained frozen, outliving everyone she knew. On the 3rd day, Charles's solicitor arrived with 2 burly men and a doctor who barely glanced at her before pronouncing her hysterical. They had papers, signed by Charles and a magistrate, authorizing her committal to Bethlehem Hospital. Marguerite looked at the men who had come to take her freedom, and she made her choice. I need a moment to gather my things. They allowed her 5 minutes. She locked herself in the bedroom, uncorked the vial, and drank the contents in 1 swallow. It tasted like copper and darkness and 300 years of waiting. Then she took the bottle of laudanum she'd purchased that morning and drank enough to ensure she wouldn't wake up mortal. She had time to lie down on the bed and arrange her skirts before the drug took effect. Her last mortal thought was of a young man in Paris, calling her mon cœur as summer rain fell on cobblestones. When Marguerite opened her eyes, the world had changed. Colors were sharper, sounds clearer. She could hear the heartbeats of the men in the next room, smell the fear sweat on their skin. And she was cold, so cold, as though her blood had turned to ice in her veins. Dante was sitting in the chair by the window, watching her with an expression of mingled hope and terror. Welcome back, he said softly. Marguerite sat up, marveling at the strength in her limbs, the clarity of her senses. She could see every thread in the carpet, hear conversations from rooms 3 floors below, and the hunger, oh, the hunger was like nothing she'd ever experienced. How long? 3 days. I've been here the entire time, ensuring no one disturbed you. He rose and crossed to the bed, kneeling beside it. How do you feel? Hungry, strong, alive, despite being dead. She looked at her hands, noting the pallor of her skin, the slight translucence. Is it always like this? The hunger fades as you learn to control it. The strength remains. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. Marguerite, I need you to understand. This is irreversible. You're immortal now. There's no going back. Good. She squeezed his hand, feeling the coldness that matched her own. I'm tired of going back. Tired of dying and being reborn and losing everything again. This time I'm staying. Dante's face crumpled, and he pressed his forehead against their joined hands. I've waited so long to hear you say that. 300 years, apparently. Marguerite used her free hand to tilt his face up, meeting those amber eyes. Tell me something. In all those lives, did you ever tell me you loved me? Every time, usually too late. Then tell me now, while we have eternity ahead of us instead of borrowed time. I love you. The words emerged rough with emotion. I've loved you for 300 years, through 7 lifetimes, and I'll love you for 300 more. You're the reason I've endured this existence, the reason I've waited, the only reason that matters. Marguerite leaned forward and kissed him, tasting centuries of longing in the press of his cold lips against hers. When they finally broke apart, she was smiling. What about Charles and his men? Gone. I convinced them you died of a heart ailment before they could take you. Charles is already courting Miss Pemberley publicly. Dante's expression darkened. He didn't even attend your funeral. Perfect. Then Marguerite Ashwell is dead, and I'm free to become someone new. She stood, testing her new strength, and walked to the window. The sun had set an hour ago, and London glittered below like a jewel box. What do we do now? Now, I teach you how to survive as what you've become, how to feed without killing, how to move through society without drawing attention, how to use your gifts. He joined her at the window, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. And then, when you're ready, we travel. I'll show you the world, all the places I've been, all the wonders I've seen. We have time now, mon cœur. All the time in the world. Marguerite looked at her reflection in the window glass, or rather, the absence of it. Where she should have seen herself, there was only the room behind her, empty space, where a woman used to stand. I don't miss it, she said, surprising herself. My reflection. My mortality. The life I had. Charles did me a favor in the end. He freed me to become this. He's still a fool. Dante wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. But yes, his cruelty opened a door you might not have walked through otherwise. They stood together in silence, watching the city below. Marguerite felt the hunger gnawing at her, but also something else. A sense of possibility she'd never experienced before. She was no longer bound by age or society's expectations, no longer limited by the frailty of mortal flesh. Dante? Yes? In those other lives, when you found me, did we have children? His arm tightened around her. Twice. Both times, I had to watch them grow old and die while I remained unchanged. It's one of the hardest parts of immortality. I'm sorry. Don't be. They were worth the pain. Everything with you has always been worth the pain. He turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. But you should know, as a vampire you can't bear children. That part of your life is over. Marguerite thought of the years she'd spent trying to conceive for Charles, the monthly disappointments, the doctors who'd examined her like a broken machine. I'm not sorry about that either. I think I only wanted children because I was supposed to want them, because it was expected. and now nothing is expected of you except what you choose for yourself. Then I choose this. She reached up and pulled him into another kiss, deeper this time, tasting the promise of centuries in the coldness of his mouth. I choose you. I choose immortality. I choose freedom. When they finally broke apart, Dante was smiling, a real smile, warm and genuine, that transformed his ancient face into something young and hopeful. Come, you need to feed, and I know a place where we can hunt without harming anyone. He offered his arm in a gesture that was both courtly and playful. Your first lesson in being a vampire. We're not monsters despite what the stories say. We're simply survivors who've learned to adapt. Marguerite took his arm, feeling the strength in her new body, the sharpness of her new senses. As they left the hotel room together, she didn't look back at the life she'd left behind. That woman, the one who'd been discarded for being old, who'd been deemed useless and inconvenient, was dead and buried. In her place stood someone new, someone powerful, someone who would never again be dismissed or discarded. Someone who had chosen her own fate and would spend eternity making that choice worthwhile. And beside her, patient and devoted after 300 years of waiting, walked the man who had loved her through 7 lifetimes and would love her through countless more. The night opened before them like a promise, dark and infinite in theirs.